Convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester's escape from Mangaung Maximum Security Prison has raised alarm bells not only about the security in our prisons, but also the alleged corruption of prison officials. Now, an investigation by Ground Up has revealed that Bester, who was thought to have committed suicide, in fact escaped from prison. Joining us is Ground Up journalist Oliver Meth, who has covered this story extensively. Oliver, it's great to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on to the program. I mean, you know, we're now realizing that government, the Correctional Services Department that is, has now admitted that the body found in his cell was not that of Thabo Bester. But according to the investigations that you've done, this is not a new realization for the department itself. In fact, an article that you wrote, Oliver, talks about an email that was sent in June of last year by a warder at Mangaung Correctional Services, saying exactly this, that the burnt body was not that of Thabo Bester.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Good morning. It's actually quite revealing that the department finally, consenting to the fact that their investigation has their internal investigation has finally wrapped up, and what they found is that the body of that was found in the cell is actually not of Thabo Bester's. The autopsy report that we've actually submitted to the department as well, that we are in possession of, actually revealed that a day after the actual fire had occurred on the 4th of May. So we are waiting to hear back from them in terms of whose body was actually that, if it was not Thabo Bester's. So we do understand that the fire was used as a decoy for prison officials to assist Thabo Bester to actually escape the prison.
I mean, it's 10 months since that escape, Oliver. Surely it couldn't have taken Correctional Services officials this long to confirm that the body was not that of Thabo Bester.
So we've been having various interviews with officials from the police force, and what we understand at this stage is that there are relations that had soured between G4S, who's the security company who controls the operations at administration at the department, since this incident has occurred. So we do understand that the report has been lagging because of those relations that have actually soured in terms of G4S coming forward and providing information in terms of events, what transpired on that day of the 3rd of May when the fire had occurred. We do understand that, it's quite evident at this stage that Thabo Bester actually did escape. He is out there and he's still luring women via Facebook and various other social media platforms. And he was assisted by various government officials. We are tracing various leads and a money trail, which will pin various officials in the coming weeks when we do publish, that Thabo Bester had been bankrolling their lifestyles in order for him to have this elaborate escape scheme. Wow.
That's scary, because it takes me on to my next question. How many government officials in correctional services would have had to have been involved in not only this elaborate escape plan, but also the multi-million rand businesses that he appeared to run from prison?
So at this moment we have circumstantial evidence that pins at least 3 of the officials, senior officials within the prison, and at least 2 high-ranking politicians within society. I can't divulge the names at this stage, but we are tracing those leads, and it seems as if Thabo Bester was well connected from the prison. He lived a very lavish, pay to stay in jail. We do have records of him sending various officials e-wallets, purchasing property, purchasing vehicles, cash. So in the next coming weeks, we will actually publish that and pin those officials. But at this stage, it's at least 3 officials within the prison that we've managed to trace the money trail on. And we are still looking at various other persons implicated that could be linked to high-profile politicians as well.
Oliver, I'm picking my jaw up from the floor as you're describing the extent of your investigation. Really incredible work being done by you and the other journalists at Ground Up. And it begs the question, had it not been for your investigation, would we know that Thabo Bester had escaped from prison and is on the run?
Yes, most definitely. That's what we picked up. If it had not been for Ground-Up's investigation, we wouldn't have known, and there wouldn't have been so much public pressure for the Department of Correctional Service and the police force to actually investigate. But what we do understand at this stage is that there hasn't been a warrant of arrest released for Thabo Bester. Points of entry and exit haven't been alerted to the fact that there's a serial rapist and killer on the run. Intel tells us, and cell phone records that we've just managed to obtain last week, that Thabo Bester, together with Dr. Nandipa, are planning an elaborate escape. We do understand that Thabo Bester also possesses at least 4 fake passports at this stage. So we are actually keeping track on that. We have spoken to the police and various officials within government. We have also offered to give them all the evidence that we have. But the last response that we have got from SAPS was that we need to contact Crime Watch Line in order to give them all the information. At this stage, none of the officials have come forward to ask us for the information that we have, but we will continue releasing all the evidence that we have and working to piece together and put the story together and hoping that Thabo Bester is actually found and apprehended.
There is an alert as well from police calling for any information, anyone with information about Thabo Bester's whereabouts to come forward. Given what you've just said, Oliver, you know, one has to question how sincere that kind of appeal is when Ground Up has done so much of the legwork here. So at this stage we are willing to cooperate with the police and whatever investigations they have, but it's also unclear in terms of which department or the scope of the investigation. So we understand that there's an investigation that's undergoing by the JICS, which is the Judicial Inspector of Correctional Services, and they're looking into the unnatural death that occurred at the prison. We're unsure about what other investigations other departments are doing, whether it's in relation to the operations at the prison in terms of what transpired on that day, or it's in operation with Thabo Bester still being out there in terms of the evidence that we've published, with him being spotted at various shopping malls and him still operating within Sandton. So the various departments haven't been forthcoming in terms of what the scope of those investigations are, but whatever they are, we are happy to cooperate with them to ensure that justice is done, not just for the victims, but also to ensure that this serial rapist and killer is actually apprehended. Yeah, for the sake of society, for the safety of the people that he does target. You know, Oliver, it begs the question. You've talked about his connections in government, his connections in correctional services as well. In fact, one of the articles in the Sunday papers this morning talk about his Hyde Park home, which he and his partner have now also escaped from in such a hurry that he left a R1.5 million watch on his bedside table. Where does Thabo Bester get this kind of money from? So we understand that the evidence is that he's been involved in scams. So he's been running a multi-million rand media company, 21st Century Media, where he's been approaching various investors and posing as the director of this company, claiming to be involved in social development within communities, with the rollout of ARVs and uplifting early childhood development courses within those communities. And various investors have poured funds into this company, and we assume at this stage that the funds have been through those investments that he's scammed a lot of businesses through. Incredible stuff. You just cannot make this kind of thing up. Oliver, you said that you're going to be publishing a lot more information. Is that reportage that we can look forward to this week? Yes, definitely. So in the coming, actually this week, we should have something that would pin the officials that assisted on the escape and how they've been bankrolled. And more coming, just timeline on what actually transpired on that day and the various violations that these officials had. The various violations that the officials had actually flagged in terms of protocol on the night of the fire. Oliver Meth, journalist with news agency Ground Up. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Incredible reporting and investigative journalism being done by that organization. A number of officials at correctional services and in government now in the crosshairs of Ground Up as they continue to track the story around Thabo Bester.